Here we are, YouTube Live, first one ever. My name is Jim Hustwit, and this is the first ever YouTube Live that I've done. It's the first of 5 that I'm doing this week, and I basically have sort of put an email out to a lot of my subscribers, an email list, who've sort of emailed me with a load of questions that they would like answering. And it feels fitting that the first one should be on breaking into the music industry. I come into contact with a lot of people who are kind of at the beginning of their musical journeys, and as such, they kind of have a lot of questions about getting into the industry and how to do it. So it felt right that this should probably be one of the main subjects. Adrian, hi. Adrian, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be coming on to you shortly. So basically, within this YouTube live, I'm going to talk about breaking into the industry. And actually how do I break into the industry is the wrong question. And then after that, I'm actually going to look into specifics. So Adrian, who's joining us, had a question regarding his music, which I listened to yesterday. And I want to address him specifically, and actually I'm going to take Adrian as an example. I'm going to say exactly what I would be doing in his situation if I wanted to get into the industry. How qualified am I to be talking about this? Well, I quit my 9 to 5 about 10 years ago. I had no formal compositional music training whatsoever. I had sort of a musical experience, but had sort of hardly any contacts with the industry. And 10 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still working. I still have a great career working in the industry. So it's basically all based on my previous experiences. But I think one of the first questions is this was Ciara, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ciara asked me, as a graduate, where do I start and who do I talk to /email? So I mean this with a lot of love, Ciara, but I think that is the wrong question to be asking, because I feel like when you're asking a question about who do I talk to, who do I email, you are hoping that someone else is going to sort of open a door for you. And I think this is the biggest mistake that anyone can make when trying to get into the music industry, and it's within any industry. But the idea that somebody is going to make it happen for you is a misnomer. There's one person who is 100% committed to you and your music career, who will work tirelessly to make it happen, and that's you. So I think the question is not how do I break into the music industry, but it's actually to sort of be a little bit more focused with the question. What do you specifically want to achieve within the music industry? Do you want to be a composer? Do you want to be a music producer? Do you want to work in events? Not a great time with coronavirus. Do you want to work for a record label? Be specific with the question and align where you're at. So Ciara, one of the things that she was asking was, she's interested in record labels, events, and all these different things, which is great, but you have to pick one of those paths. Pick one of those paths and align your efforts with that specific target, because unfortunately, if you're sort of trying to sort of vaguely do 6 or 7 different things, I think you're spreading yourself too thin. So first of all, asking the right question is like, as a composer, I think it's like, okay, how do I earn money from my music would be a better question than how do I break into the industry. Then more specifically, how do I earn money being a composer for TV and film? How do I earn money or make a living from writing production music? So being specific, changing the question from this sort of vagaries of how do I get into the music industry, which is kind of an abstract, to drilling down and being specific about what it actually is you want to achieve. Because once you've specifically identified what you want to achieve, you can then align your actions with achieving that goal. So be specific, be focused. And Ciara, my advice to you would be to pick a path. Now, I think whilst reaching out to people, emailing and calling people is definitely worth doing, because you want to sort of try and come into contact with people. Certainly a phone call is much more powerful than an email, because an email is very easily deleted and very easily ignored. I tend to do it, and I have my hands up on a daily basis. I receive far too many emails for me to actually be able to answer. So certain emails go to the bottom of the pile and unfortunately never get answered. And with emailing, I've actually done a video on this in terms of how to reach out and how to network online during, particularly during a pandemic, because obviously at the moment we are very limited in what we can do face to face. So check that out. It's on YouTube. It's called How to Network, music networking, how to do it online. But check that out, and that's with specific sort of ideas on how to actually reach out to people within the industry online, and how to hopefully increase your chances of getting a response. But a phone call is much more powerful. But here's the big thing. Here's the big thing when you're reaching out to people. Quite often when people reach out, you're reaching out saying, please, can you help me? Whereas actually what you should be doing is going to them and saying, hey, let me help you. Okay? Let that sink in. So rather than going to someone and asking for them to help you out because they don't know you from Adam, they have 100 people a day asking them the same question. If you can go to them and offer to solve a problem for them, all of a sudden that becomes interesting. So Ciara, let's say for example you sort of narrowed down, because I know you sort of said, oh, you're interested in what are we sort of projects, events, all music related things, record labels. Let's say for example you narrow it down to you want to work for a record label. First of all, identify a record label whose artists you like, because there's no point in going to like an EDM record label if you're not into EDM. Then identify someone within that company who works within an area that you want to get involved with. From that, you can then sort of have a look and go, okay, try and put yourself in their position. What issues or pain points do they face on a daily basis? And then your approach should be, how can you solve that for them? Because that is a compelling proposition. That is where somebody goes, ooh, okay, that sounds really, really interesting. So for example, when people end up working with me, it's normally because they have not necessarily an area of expertise per se, but they are prepared or have, if they're good at graphic design and I need a graphic designer. I had a guy once come in and help me out record an entire album, and he was a video editor. So I taught him music production whilst he did a load of video editing for me. In fact, loads of these sort of older videos on my channels were done by him as I brought him. So that was kind of like, it was a skills exchange, if you will. Ollie, who works with me on a regular basis, is great with everything operations. So he came in to do an internship and has subsequently now stayed on and become sort of a regular handling operations for me. So go to people looking to solve a problem rather than expecting them to do something for you. You go to them and sort of offering them something. Lucia was somebody else who got in touch with me, who she's really keen to work in a music studio. Excuse me, got a really dry mouth. She really wants to work in a music studio, sort of like in an engineering production side. And she's sort of asking, okay, well, how do I approach them? How do I get on their radar? So yeah, it's difficult because you're just another name in many. So the question you've got to be asking yourself is how, first of all, again, going back to that idea, Lucia, of how do you solve a problem for them? What problem might they have in that studio that you can solve? It might not even be actually within the realm of recording. It might be within the back office of helping them with their marketing or something like that. So if you can go to them and approach them solving that problem, that's your route in. But also think about differentiating yourself. It's like, if you can do something which makes you stand out, I mentioned this in the video about approaching people online, it's like the subject line that I receive, the subject lines that I receive is sort of like internship, blah, blah, blah. I gave the example of if someone puts a subject line, let's eat grandma, all of a sudden that subject line gets me asking the question like, what the hell is that? And this was Transgressive Records. Tobes at Transgressive Records talked about this, this was Let's Eat Grandma, the band. Is it Grandma or Granddad? I can never remember because I've changed it. But he received an email with that subject line which got his attention. So similarly, if you're emailing someone, put some wacky subject line in there which makes them think, whoa. Somebody else emailed me and referenced in the subject line Lucky Chicken, which was a short film I worked on years ago. And again, there was something in that subject line that they said that got my attention and got me to read the email. And if you're calling people or you're contacting people, just think of a quirky way to get on their radar. Someone once talked to me about they used to send people Kit Kats in the post to get people's attention. So they'd open it, they go Kit Kat, and it's like, this is random, I'm receiving a Kit Kat in the post, what's this all about? And then they read the message and then know it's from that person. Now, that might not be their cue to then pick up the phone and call you instantly, but it puts you on their radar. They will know the name if they receive an email or a letter or whatever. So just think outside the box and again, try to solve a problem, but do so in a way that gets their attention, which isn't just, hi, can you help me kind of thing. So moving on to Adrian Earnshaw, who's watching. Hi, Adrian. Adrian, what I'd quite like to do is, if you're up for it, just text yes, hit a comment. By the way, if anyone watching this and they have a question, then please do pop it in the comment and I will respond. But Adrian, you had a question. Now, if you want me to I'd quite like to join me on screen here as like almost like a Zoom call. If you're up for that, I'm going to send you a link here. If you click on that, you should pop up on screen next to me. So if you don't want to, then there's no problem. Just type no in the comments, and that's fine. But if you're up for it, click on that link. There you go. There's a link there. Because this is the thing, is I can offer sort of specific advice, but it'd be more interesting to know exactly what you're looking to do, Adrian. So no. Okay, well, while we're waiting, if you do decide to join me, it'll be literally just like a Zoom call. You don't even need to have your camera on, although it'd be good if you did. But so Adrian writes kind of very cool. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's pop you on. Adrian, hi, how you doing?
You right?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you? So Adrian writes kind of very cool ambient electronic music. He's got loads of stuff out there. He's got YouTube, he's got Spotify. On the surface, it looks like you're doing everything absolutely right. And the question that you were asking, Adrian, was, apparently a lot of people have said that this would work really well for a documentary, and you're sort of going, okay, how do I go about getting that on a documentary? Now, quick question to you. Is there something specific? I noticed that you quite often put your music to kind of like videos of sort of like the cosmos and things like that. Is that a specific area of interest to you?
Hang on. I'm getting getting two streams here. Hang on.
Oh no.
Hang on.
Yeah, just mute the YouTube one and just.
Yeah, that's what I've done. Yeah, that's it. As a child, sort of going back to about 4 to about my teenagers, I was really into astronomy, and I was struggling at one stage for titling tracks. And I thought, well, hang on a second, I've got a hobby here, got astronomy. So hence all these wonderful sort of spacey sounds, because I thought my music's a lot ambient, space, electronics, imagination. I thought I've got a whole universe, excuse the pun there, of words to play with there. So let's go for it. Okay. So I've got an endless supply of track names. Yeah. I've got the music sat there, but it's a case of I've had lots of other people say to me, this would be great in a documentary, and I thought, but how do I do that?
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Have you kind of identified specific programs that actually are about the cosmos or, cosmology generally?
Well, there's quite a few on that come up on BBC Two. Brian Cox being one of them.
Yeah. And there's Neil deGrasse Tyson as well. He does some. So I think if I was in your position, the first thing I'd be doing is identifying programs that kind of have the cosmos and cosmology as. I mean, that's not to say. So just for anyone who's watching who's not heard Adrian's music, it's kind of quite ambient electronic. There's I felt like there was kind of a bit of an 80s vibe to it, almost hearing a bit of Jean-Michel Jarre in there at times.
That's a big influence. Tangerine Dream, Jean-Michel Jarre, Vangelis, that type of sound. So if you think sort of the lead side, if you think Vangelis, you're not going to be far off there. Yeah.
So first port of call would be to identify the programs that are making that. You sort of have that kind of imagery and that sort of subject matter. Second of all, identify the production companies that are making those programs, and then start contacting those production companies and saying, just offering, saying, hey, this is what I do, this is what I'm about. So that's certainly one way that I've sort of approached with sort of TV stuff, is I've just been sort of knocking on the door of production companies. Unfortunately, it generally is, oh yeah, no, great, we'll keep your details for later.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the game, and hopefully if you contact 100 production companies that are doing that, if there are 100 production companies that are doing that, maybe one might pan out. I think then you've also got to have a system in place whereby you check in fairly regularly with those people so that they don't forget you. Again, you might not get a response because you've made contact, but if you've made contact once, then that's a good thing. But certainly on the phone is the best way to do it, because if you phone them up and say, hey, this is what I do, I'd like to send you some stuff, is that okay? They're expecting your email, so that increases the chance and the likelihood that they'll actually open that email. If it's unsolicited and they're not expecting it, less likely to open it. If you've spoken to them ahead of time, they know your name, and you've ask the right questions. Ask them, do you use live music? Because obviously there's no point in sending them stuff if they don't need that sort of music. But hopefully you've identified that they do. But then once you've spoken to them and emailed them some stuff, hopefully get some feedback. If not, follow up with an email saying, hey, I hope you got a chance to listen to it. Did you have any sort of thoughts or feedback? I'd love to know, what you think. Open-ended email asking for them to sort of contact you back. They might not. But then again, okay, so like in a month, 2 months, sort of like a system whereby, you've got alerts saying email, follow up with so-and-so, so-and-so. That's one approach. Another approach could be maybe slightly stronger in terms of what I was talking about earlier, which is sort of, rather than going with your hands open saying, hey, can you help me out and use my music? It's sort of like saying, taking stuff that they've done, putting your music to it and saying, hey, I saw this program that you've done. It was amazing. I've just done a mock-up of what it would look like with my music because I think it would work really well. That, I think, is a slightly stronger way to approach them because first of all, you're showing that you actually, really like what they do. You've taken the time to sort of illegally download the footage off YouTube or whatever, but you've gone to them and said, hey, look, this is how much I like your stuff. I really think my music would work well. And I think that's probably a slightly stronger approach. So those are two slightly different approaches. Another approach, now I was thinking about, because obviously I work quite a lot with production music. So my first thought was, okay, so if I was approaching a production music library, because obviously a production music, you can approach a production company that's making TV programs, but there's a limit to the number of TV programs they're making, where a production music company will have thousands of contacts in production companies and commissioning editors and what have you all over the world that they're constantly tapping into. So from a numbers game, it would be better to have it on a production music database so that people can pick it up and use it. Now, if I received that music, because I curate for a production music company called ASX, it's trailer music, so it's a bit different. But if I was, say, Universal or BMG and I received that, the first thing I'd be thinking is, we've probably got something like this. Because it's quite ambient. It's sort of lots of movement, and I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that they've kind of got lots of that sort of thing already. How much it gets used, I don't know. It's a long shot. I mean, I imagine it would get some usage. So the question then is, if they've got stuff like that already, how can you differentiate what you do? Now this might be sort of, I think, and this is where sometimes the artist hat and the production music hat are slightly different. As an artist, you're all about, this is my musical freedom, my creative musical expression, and I won't, change it for anyone. Whereas actually, if you kind of want to give it a lease of life and hopefully monetize it, you've got to be looking at, okay, well, what can I do to it to first of all, make it stand out, but also to fill a hole. Is like, if EMI have got a hole in their catalogue and they haven't got, if they've got the ambient electronic stuff, great. What haven't they got? Is there a sort of a variation on that? Could you combine it with trap or dubstep? Obviously, I think you'd be best playing into your musical influences. So if there's a sort of musical influence that you have, rather than sort of trying to do trap if you're not into trap, but if you can then sort of make it a little bit different and make it available to people for, so it's something they haven't got. Again, you're going to them and saying, hey, I'm solving a problem for you. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Thanks.
So that, in a nutshell, would be kind of how I would approach this thing. And it is a long game, and you do have to keep knocking on doors, and quite often you don't get a reply, and sometimes you even get rejections, but that's fine. It's part of the game. But hopefully at some point something will break. Editors as well, editors are good people to tap up, because quite often they're making a lot of choices about music. So if you can get on the radar of editors who are editing the kind of programs you're looking at, or anything where you think it might work, and it's just about sort of knocking away on the door.
Just got to record those programs, because the titles go past so fast you never catch the name.
Yeah, I'm sure if you do a bit of a search online, you'll be able to find out who's sort of editing them and what have you. So yeah, cool. So I hope that helped, mate. But
brilliant. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, mate. No worries. Thanks for the question.
No problem. Bye.
Cool. See you. So in summary, like in terms of breaking into the music industry, it's not about breaking in, because if you are a creator, if you are making music, you're already a part of the music industry. The question needs to be refined to, how do I make it work for me? What do you want to do? Be specific about what you want to achieve in the music industry, and then get focused in terms of the actions that you take about contacting people. And when you are contacting people to get into the music industry, not going with your hands open saying, will you help me? going to them saying, let me help you. And if you can try and identify something that they need help with, a problem that they need solving, that puts you in a much stronger position. Thereafter, in order to get that in the first place, think a little bit outside the box in terms of how to contact people. And how to make yourself stand out from the other 50 people that may have contacted them that day. It's a kind of an exercise in marketing, so look at marketing resources and things like that. And somebody mentioned, I think it was Ciara as well, mentioned about CVs. Certainly within composing and music production, a CV, nobody cares. It's all about the music. Some people send me CVs. I never look at CV. Your qualifications are completely irrelevant if you want to get into the music industry as a composer or a producer. However, obviously, if you are contacting businesses, record labels, they might be a little bit more interested. But imagine they receive 20 CVs a day from people. Most of those CVs will be formatted in a special way that you kind of taught at school, or whatever, how to format a CV. Blow that out the window. Just do something absolutely crazy. Use color, use massive fonts, use pictures, use imagery, just do something crazy. Somebody was telling me the other day about they sent out CVs in the form of packaging, like chicken in a packet or something like that. And actually, when you turned over the cooking instructions for the chicken, it wasn't real chicken, but the cooking instructions for the chicken was their CV. But that's just a wacky idea to sort of how to make your CV stand out, and that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is trying to stand out from the crowd. I'm doing a live like this every single night, so if you've got a specific question, if you've got a question now you want to pop in the comments, feel free. If not, if you can email me. Wait a minute, I've got a banner here. If you want to email me, library@larpmusic.com, I will look to address any sort of comments that you have, or questions or challenges that you have tomorrow, because I know when it comes to the music industry, people have loads of challenges. It could be specific with the industry, it could be with music production, it could be with composition. Any questions or challenges you've got, pop them in an email or pop them in the comments there, and I will endeavour to answer them as well as possible. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to be doing one of these every night this week, maybe next week as well. We'll see how they go. Tomorrow, Ria has asked to talk about kind of, I suppose, the mental health side of working in the industry, particularly as a creative, facing things like fear of failure, comparison with others, and also like imposter syndrome and feeling like a fraud, things which I know I have definitely suffered with in the past. So going to be looking at kind of mental health side of things tomorrow. Thanks very much. Do comment and let me know any thoughts, issues, problems, emotions, or just generally what you're watching on Netflix at the moment. I'd love to hear it. Thanks very much, and I'll see you same time tomorrow, 6 p.m. YouTube Live. Bye.